Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Why No One Plays for Genshin. We're gonna take a break from roasting the 5 stars given that the past 5 were all 5 stars, although I'd be hard pressed to call Aloy and Traveler one, but the game says they are, if only nominally. I was torn between making a video on Lisa or Xinyan first, so I went ahead and made a community poll and the final result was 6-4 in favor of the latter. Rest assured though, I will be covering Lisa in the next installment of the series. I have the thumbnail already prepared actually. For today though, let's talk about arguably the most neglected character in Genshin Impact, Xinyan. Before we get started though, sorry for the usual disclaimer, but it needs to be said in each episode since this could be the very first video they see on the channel. To all the players out there who swear by Xinyan, I want to make it perfectly clear. This video is not a personal attack, nor is it meant to ridicule the character or anyone who plays her. The goal of Why No One Plays is to discuss characters who aren't used very much or sought after, analyzing what makes them unpopular, and discussing ways we can hypothetically improve their gameplay beyond giving them more damage. Also, please remember, everyone is viable. Even the weakest characters in the game can be used to complete most if not all of Genshin's content. So at the end of the day, play whoever you'd like. Just be like the Keqing mains and pray to the waifu gods that she'll get buff one day. Xinyan's time in Genshin Impact is one of misfortune, I'd say. She was released very early on in the game, right alongside Zhongli in version 1.1. Yet despite being around for over a year, there's never been any general acknowledgement of her in the meta. Just about every 4-star unit has received some level of exposure, either through their merits in-game for a time or their popularity within the community. As an example, while not many people use Razor, Noelle, and Barbara these days, they were very good units to have in version 1 when there weren't that many characters to work with. And at one point, there was even speculation that Max Constellation Razor was stronger than Keqing. Others are given attention for their incredible supportive capabilities, namely Shanling, Xingqiu, Sucrose, and Bennett. Then of course we have Kaya, Lisa, Ningguang, and Toma, who don't have the most practical kits but have a memorable personality or role in the story. And you know, because best waifu, best husbando, yada yada yada. Aside from Aloy, Xinyan may very well be the most forgettable character in all of Genshin Impact. In fact, if it wasn't for her involvement in the Labyrinth event with Child and Sada, I doubt she would ever have seen the light of day. In that sense, if her design or personality didn't capture the hearts of the community, the only other way to do so would be through in-game usability, right? That is a pretty tall order. As previously established in Amber and Clee's video, Pyro has no shortage of contenders. During early 2021, miHoYo saw fit to inundate us with exclusively Pyro and Cryo units, and let's say there's a lot of them. Considering how 2 of the best support 4-star units in the game are also Pyro, Xinyan was already at a disadvantage, but the one area neither Bennett nor Xiangling covered, at least officially, was main DPS. Yes, I'm aware Xiangling is quite viable as a main DPS, but come on, hardly anyone uses her in that way when she can do 99% of the same stuff as a sub-attacker. Fortunately, that's exactly what Xinyan does. In fact, not just a damage dealer, but she's also kind of a tank. She isn't the first one of her kind. We've seen the potential of weaponizing defense with Noelle prior, and at the time, even now to an extent, the roster was dealing with the scarcity of main DPS 4-star units. It was really only Fischl, Razor, and maybe Ningguang. Beidou's power wasn't fully recognized until much later into the game's development. So how did Xinyan do in this department? Not too great. She's suffering from a bit of an identity crisis. Her entire kit is at odds with itself. She's a damage dealer but has a lot of elements that give off the impression of a support. She's a physical attacker yet can achieve superconduct without external help. She's a main DPS but has long cooldowns and poor single target damage, and her different attacks don't scale off the same metric. Essentially, you can never quite use 100% of her power because if you spec fully into damage or defense, you miss out on the other, while splitting your resources leads to mediocre results on both ends. Is she a damage dealer like Hu Tao? Is she a tank like Noelle? Is she a support like Zhongli? Is she a bruiser like Beidou? The lack of a clear role for her makes it difficult for people to associate a reason to want to use her. Those of you who watched my Kokomi episode may remember hearing something similar to this. In class-based games, it's almost always better for a character to excel in one particular role rather than be decent at 2 different ones. In order for someone to stand out as a jack of all trades, they have to be extremely good in 2 departments like Bennett. He gives your team amazing regeneration and a ridiculous attack buff, augmenting your offense and defense at the same time. Xinyan is only average at both and serviceable at best in one or the other. To elaborate, we can break down every conflicting detail about her, starting with her shield. Sweeping Fervor grants her a shield that increases in value for every enemy struck, and the numbers are contingent on her defense. The only other aspect of her kit that scales off of defense is her Constellation 6, which gives her bonus damage on her charge attacks equal to her defense. Doesn't sound too bad at first glance. Half of your defense is added to your offense. It's reminiscent to Noelle's Constellation 6, except her defense boost goes straight into attack power, which applies to everything. So those are her defense parameters. Now let's look at her attack ones. What determines if a character is meant for support or offense largely comes down to their talents and constellation. All 4 of her main constellations promote building damage. Fatal Acceleration gives a bonus attack speed upon scoring a crit. Impromptu Opening automatically forms a level 3 shield on top of guaranteeing the initial physical hit is a crit strike. Wildfire Rhythm is a simple physical res debuff, but given how insular physical damage is, it's basically only for her, and we already talked about her C6. Where this becomes a problem is that Xinyan's offense and defense do not work with each other at all. Unlike Zhongli's shield for instance, which causes you to deal effectively 25% bonus damage to all enemies, Xinyan's second passive gives her 15% bonus physical damage while the shield holds. However, in order to make it last, you need to build defense, defeating the purpose of getting that 15% physical damage since you lost damage trying to get it. You could make a case that players should just ignore her shield and spec full damage, but therein lies the problem. A character with a dead ability is a bad character. Common sense dictates why would you bother investing in a unit who has something that is completely worthless versus a unit who can utilize all their attributes. I believe Xinyan was intended to be a bruiser, an attacker who's slow but hits very hard. What ended up happening though was that she's half tank and half DPS. For instance, if they wanted to make her a bruiser, the shield would have to scale off of attack, not defense. But let's assume for the time being we can disregard her shield and spec all points into damage. That's where the next problem comes from. Physical damage dealers acquire the bulk of their power from the elemental reaction Superconduct, a combination of cryo and electro that inflicts a burst of cryo damage to all enemies nearby, while reducing their physical resistance by 40% for 12 seconds, which means you get essentially a 1.66 times damage boost for the duration. As of version 2.4, the only other dedicated physical attackers in the game are Eula and Razor, who conveniently already happen to fit one part of the equation, thus only requiring you to dedicate one other party slot. Xinyan, on the other hand, is a pyro unit, which at first may seem like free amps, but she's not a pyro damage dealer, she's a physical attacker. Due to this, she requires 2 party slots to be occupied by an electro and cryo unit just to put her on par with Eula or Razor, at which point you may as well just use Razor or Eula if you have her. In this scenario, elements only matter in the context of achieving Superconduct. It doesn't matter if you're Animo, Geo, Hydro, whatever. If you're willing to overcome that wall, there's still 2 others. Unlike Noelle, who receives a flat attack boost based on her defense, Xinyan only gets this bonus on her charged attack, and charged attacks kinda suck on Claymore users because of how slow they are. But her normal attack animation is also incredibly slow despite her surprisingly high multipliers. In addition, Sweeping Fervor has an extremely long cooldown of 18 seconds, which is ironically longer than Rift Revolution, her ultimate, not to mention the need for her to hit multiple targets to get a level 3 shield which has the pulsing damage. Constellation 2 does give you a free level 3 shield on casting Rift Revolution, but you still miss out on Wildfire Rhythm's physical break for a third of the time since it's not the shield that inflicts the debuff but the actual attack itself. Furthermore, each physical damage dealer carries their own advantage to combat. Eula's benefit is her immense burst damage with her Lightfall swords, far exceeding anyone else. Razor has almost permanent uptime with his ultimate and high attack speed. That and, you know, man's got a motherfucking stand. What was supposed to set Xinyan apart from her competitors was the shield, and on paper, that would have been a fantastic niche to have, being able to face tank anything that hits you while dishing out heavy punishment in return. She basically could have been a budget version of Zhongli and Eula put into one. That's what makes her so frustrating. You can never fully use all of her attributes at maximum efficiency. If you want to increase her defense, you won't be dealing very much damage. And if you try to do both, you end up with someone who doesn't deal that much damage and isn't very tanky either. That's on top of all the other things holding her back, like being a pyrophysical damage dealer. Now, there is one thing about her that I think needs to be addressed, and that is Thoma. When he was introduced, everyone was quick to think of him as Xinyan with all the janks fixed, but there's been a lot of debate about whether that's really the case, so I want to clear that up first. Thoma is a spear user, while Xinyan wields a greatsword. Both of their elemental skills are a burst of pyro damage in an area in front of them that gives them a shield. Xinyan's shield is based off her defense, while Thoma's is based on his max health. In terms of shield value, I think Thoma does win, but remember Xinyan's can deal pulsating damage. Thoma's elemental burst is a burst of pyro damage along with a buff that causes the active character's normal attacks to create a shield just like his skill, while also triggering Fiery Collapse, a blast of fire in a cone in front of them. The reason people think Thoma is a better version of Xinyan is purely because both of them have a shield on their elemental skill, and both have this weird split scaling between offense and defense. What they do is very different though. Xinyan is a primary physical damage dealer while Thoma is a pyro damage support. Their active shields and respective properties can be used as support, but for mutually exclusive purposes. Thoma's scaling was designed much more cohesively though. His 4th Ascension passive increases Fiery Collapse damage based on a portion of his max health, which is great considering his shield is also max health scaling. He gets to simultaneously boost his power and defense through one stat. Then there's his Constellation 6, which provides an almost permanent 15% bonus damage to all forms of your party's auto attacks. Toma is a true dedicated support, whereas Xinyan is this awkward split between damage and support. However, that doesn't make them a one-to-one comparison. That would be the same as comparing Barbara and Xingqiu under the notion that they both heal. Having said that, it does highlight Xinyan's predicament. You have to jump through so many flaming hoops just to make her work, and even then, all you get is an average damage dealer. I noticed that MiHoYo has the tendency to think characters would be way too broken if they had scaling conversions, and to be fair, I don't blame them after what happened to Zhongli. Kokomi gets more damage from healing bonus and health, but she's locked out of critical hits. Xinyan does get more damage from defense, but it's heavily restricted. She also presents an issue with characters that try to do too much, which I think says a lot about MiHoYo's character gameplay design. Each of the units in my Why No One Plays series that I've made thus far have one thing in common. Something in their kit is not connected together properly. Keqing's got amazing single target DPS, but her charge attack knocks enemies away from her, thus lowering her DPS. Klee has explosive pyro damage output, but her attack range is too short. Aloy's got a burst ultimate, but the rest of her kit requires her to be out on the field for long periods of time. I can't help but get this feeling that they just throw a bunch of random things together without properly constructing a flowchart of sorts or figuring out how the character works in multiple situations, almost as if they were conceptualized in a vacuum. It would be one thing if this defect was associated only with 4 stars, because then we can infer MiHoYo intentionally makes them bad to make the 5 stars look good. But this is occurring to both. Certain characters have elemental skills and bursts that make very little sense together, like Xinyan. But we're getting off topic. This is about why no one plays her, not Genshin's character design issues. Anyways, what could be done to potentially make her better? I have 2 options. Solution 1, fully embrace her theme of a Bruiser Juggernaut. If Razor is supposed to be about speed and Eula is about power, Xinyan should be durability. She obviously shouldn't have as much damage as Eula given the difference in rarity, but we can at least put her on the same level as Razor. The most obvious change is to have her shield scale off her attack, not defense, thus allowing you to spec fully into damage stats. Secondly, her Constellation 6 should instead boost her health equal to a portion of her attack. Third, change her 4th Ascension passive from increased physical damage to increased crit damage. Given that Constellation 2 guarantees her elemental burst will crit, it creates a natural flow from one attack to the next. She opens up with Sweeping Fervor to get a shield and damage bonus, then unleashes her ultimate for her finisher. This establishes her identity as a beefy fighter who can tank a lot of hits while dealing good damage in return. Solution 2, make her a physical DPS support. We don't have one of those yet, and she's already sort of being used in that way, so might as well double down on it. As mentioned, 4th Ascension passive gives a 15% physical damage bonus to the active party member while the Sweeping Fervor shield holds, and her Constellation 4 breaks enemy physical resistance by 15% for 12 seconds when landing the attack. Instead of a flat amount for each, Xinyan's physical damage boost and shred should both scale off her defense, incentivizing you to go full tank to get the most value out of your shield and buffs. It's kind of the same thing as Bennett's Fantastic Voyage. The higher his base attack, the higher the damage amp within his circle. I understand Xinyan was one of their first attempts at designing hybrid scaling, and to their credit, they sort of figured out how to make it work more efficiently with recent units like Kazuha and Shogun. It's just a shame that Xinyan never got a chance to be good, and then Toma came out, which made everyone disregard her even further. Then you have to account for Bennett and Xiangling being out since day 1 and are 2 very overpowered pyro supports that it feels almost like she never stood a chance. I think that's going to be it for today though. What do you guys think about the changes I proposed for her? Or to all the Xinyan mains out there, if you could fix her, which approach would you take? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, it'd be awesome if you gave it a like and subscribed. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, join my Discord server, and check out my previous Why No One Plays episodes if you haven't yet. For now though, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll be seeing you for Lisa's episode, which will be coming out soon. Take care.